Hey everybody, my name is JJ and it's Monday, August 28th, 2023. Back with another dose of economic reality. First of all, let's get the obvious out of the way. I got some sun yesterday, but I made the mistake of wearing my sunglasses most of the time, so now it's looking pretty weird with the white around my eyes and kind of sunburned everywhere else. Anyways, I hope it doesn't distract you from the financial economic news that I'm about to bring you. And we do have a lot to cover now. In this report, I want to talk about what's happening here in California and some other states too, I imagine. Landlords are getting arrested for trying to evict and or remove squatters from their own property. Squatters meaning people that just moved in without any lease or rent, without the right to move in, but they actually have rights, believe it or not. We're going to talk about that here later in this report. But first, let's just get caught up on the economy. The economy primarily driven by consumer spending, and then most of that consumer spending is consumers taking on loads of debt. That can't last forever. Now, we did see a reprieve back in 2020 when people had all these relief packages to help out the fact that they couldn't pay their bills. There would have been an economic tsunami of homelessness, defaults, foreclosures. I mean, you name it would have happened in 2020 if it weren't all the new money creation and trillions of dollars pumped into the economy. I'm sure you know the rest. And as a result, we did see rising prices. Now, let's start this report with a meme that I thought was pretty funny, actually, but pretty accurate on the direction of the economy and where we've been the last 3 years. Take a look at this meme right here. This is actor Matthew McConaughey. Now, I'm not a big movie guy, so I don't really know what movies these are. But the top one here, getting my stimulus check in 2020. And you see Matthew McConaughey looking pretty healthy there. Seeing my grocery bill in 2023. And a movie that he was in, he looks pretty tore up. And this is a nice, quick example of how programs meant to help actually hurt more in the end. We see the inflation's not going away, and we're going to talk about what the Fed has said here regarding the cost of living here in just a minute, which is pretty scary, but pretty accurate meme on how programs that feel good when they come out with a big smile ultimately can lead to some very, very harsh conditions, to say the least, for the population. Wow, they even made him look like he was going bald in that movie. That's pretty crazy.
Let's talk about protecting your wealth. The US dollar has lost 85% of its purchasing power since the 1970s, when the dollar was decoupled from gold, and the government seems bent on continuing the tradition. From now until the next elections, the government can print as much money as they want. The last time they did that, inflation went up 9%. This means one thing: the security of your future and your family's future is all in your hands. Make sure you freeze the value of the wealth that you're holding. Invest in gold with Noble Gold Investments. Gold is the one asset that has proven to withstand recession, inflation, and just about all economic threats. Noble Gold Investments is here to help you if you want to invest in gold. You will also get a 24 karat 1/4 ounce gold standard coin for free. Go to bullboomgold.com now. That's bullboomgold.com, or simply call 877-646-5347. Noble Gold is the only gold company I trust. Link down in the description of this video.
Now, let's talk about what the Cleveland Fed president said, basically admitting defeat on their fight against the high cost of living, the fight against inflation. Cleveland Cleveland Fed president came out and said, we're going to see above 2% inflation beyond 2025, at least, until 2025, but beyond. So basically, according to this Fed president, they've admitted defeat in the battle against the high cost of living and rising price. And that just underpins the fact that you cannot print your way out of a financial crisis. You can avoid a recession because when people spend money on credit and run up debt, that's chalked up as GDP, and they use the GDP to gauge if there's a recession or not. But avoiding a recession has unintended consequences. Remember, when a recession happens, typically you see falling prices, falling cost of living, because there's so many job losses that people pull back on their spending, or simply just don't have the money to spend, or don't have the available credit to spend with. And that creates falling prices because demand, basically plunges. But when you have all these programs and send money out to people, and keep the demand up, but yet production slows down and even stops. If you look at all the shutdowns that we've had, then that creates a massive rising cost of living. That's one thing we've been pretty accurate about here. We warned as soon as it happened in 2020. We warned you right here in this channel that you're going to see the cost of living explode. And I was one of the only people that said we wouldn't see falling prices or deflation because we saw the programs coming out, right? And this is not something you have to have a college degree to figure out. By the way, speaking of college degrees, I got an email from a viewer, and it's a very loyal and longtime viewer. So I want to say a hello and a shout out to Professor BJNG. He actually corrected me on something that I've said here probably a lot, and that's the word index. If you put it in plural, it's indices. And I had said, in a couple reports that all the indexes were down. So he corrected me on that. But that's just an example of how having a bachelor's degree, really doesn't prepare you for all the things that you're going to have in life. Now I'm trying to remember how I got on this topic. Oh, as far as making predictions or analysis on where the economy is headed, it's pretty simple. We knew when we saw these programs that we would not see falling prices and the falling cost of living. We said the housing bubble wasn't going to crash. We were one of the only channels on YouTube that I know of, maybe the only channel that told you the housing bubble wasn't bust. When there's other channels that have been saying it for 2, 3 years, that the housing bubble was going to crash. And I'm not mad at them for doing that. That that's how they make money. They get people to watch the videos, hoping that home prices are going to crash. And there's always that chance. There's always a chance that something could break, something crazy could happen with the economy or the banking system, where the banking system finally implodes on itself, right? But with all the capabilities of money printing, it's very unlikely to happen unless something really behind the scenes, the rug gets pulled out from under, a central bank or something like that, which is very, very unlikely to happen, in my opinion. Simultaneous tornadoes wipe out all the different Fed buildings, and they destroy, the money printer or something like that, right? Or some legal change where, just printing all this money becomes illegal. But see, the lawmakers that are making millions of dollars, they're very unlikely to make the money creation uh, illegal, and we're very unlikely to go back to a gold standard. But that's one of the reasons why we keep a close eye on the BRICS nations. Now, I read in this channel, I told you that the BRICS nations were not going to introduce a gold-backed currency, but what they did do is they announced several other nations that are joining the BRICS alliance, so to speak, to trade outside of the dollar, and eventually that could lead to big changes in the world and in the global economy, and could cause a massive run from the dollar. Now, is it going to happen overnight? No, I've always said this is going to be a slow motion collapse, and most things that happen financially, economically, are in slow motion. But there are more nations joining all the time. In fact, something unusual just happened. I shouldn't say unusual. Something big happened here that is actually along with goes along with the de-dollarization that we've been hearing. India, a member of the BRICS alliance, has recently basically ditched the dollar on a pretty big transaction. They used rupees instead of the dollar. They used rupees to purchase 1 million barrels of oil. Right, so that's big, right? You've all heard the term petrodollar. Back in the early 70s, it was introduced between the countries that produce oil, OPEC nations, and the US, that dollars would be used for global oil trade. Now things are changing, and it's been about 50 years, right? So it's a storm of a lot of things combined, basically. A lot of money creation with inflationary forces just by itself, but along with de dollarization and lots of other inflationary forces happening here. So big things happening, big changes happening, and we try to do our best here to keep an eye on the global picture as well as the local picture. So let's talk about something locally here, and it's something that's kind of specific to some states. Let's look at a story here. An owner of a property said squatters took over his home, but he got arrested when he called the police on them. And this is because of something called squatters' rights. Squatters' rights, that's right. So people that basically break into a home or take over a vacant home and just start living there, they all of a sudden have rights. Right? And this one's out of Georgia, DeKalb County, Georgia. He said squatters broke into his home in February and are still there. Backlogs with courts and marshal's offices have left him legally unable to enter his home. Says here recently there's been an eviction order, but the homeowner's still waiting here as of recently. And just wait because it gets crazier. Two people have died in his home from overdoses since this started, and code enforcement has even cited the homeowner for not properly maintaining a house he legally cannot access. Um, he said he showed up at first to find the people living there, and as soon as he pulled into the driveway, someone pointed a one of these things at him. Wow, just crazy what you can get away with in this country. To me, sometimes it feels like they want criminals to have rights, and they want to create, more lawlessness here. I don't know why they'd want to do that, but that's what it seems like to me sometimes. Right? But that's just one of the risks of being a property investor, being a property owner, or a landlord, is you have these downfalls where people can move into your home, squatters' rights, they can trash your home. Even people that you rent to can trash your home, and you might have a very hard time, recouping that money back. I mean, even if you keep the security deposit, if they cause a lot of damage, you might find yourself in some court battle. Just watch one of the court shows, the TV court shows, what Judge Judy and all those, and you see quite a lot of landlord slash tenant disputes in there. Right. So, in other words, be very, very careful when you jump into the business of real estate and you try to become a landlord, because if the home is vacant, that's very risky. Also, you're going to have a hard time getting an insurance company to insure the home if it's a vacant home. And people could cause damage, and people could just sit there and squat in your home, and they may have rights depending on the state. I read a couple other California stories of squatters happening as well, and actually, I didn't know at first that this was happening in other states until I read that last story that we looked at out of Georgia. All right, but let's stick on the topic of real estate here because housing is so important to an economy. There's a article, not an article. There's a video that I did yesterday or 2 days ago, where I talked about how Zillow now has their lending division giving out 1% mortgages, 1% mortgages. So that's going to be another thing that's going to be a pressure on home prices, keeping prices higher, and preventing a housing bubble crash or a housing market crash or housing deflation, right? And they're not the only company giving out the 1% mortgages, but the point is, it's still very easy, not just to borrow money, but to get a big loan and have hardly any down payment, just 1%. Now, not everybody qualifies. There's still some qualifiers, but the point is, people are still able to borrow a lot more money than they should be able to borrow to buy residential real estate right now. But on the heels of that report, very soon after it was announced that Zillow did the 1% mortgages, and it's not a new program, but it was recently put in the news and put out on a lot of different websites and real estate websites, etc. Right, but right on the heels of that, here's this right here: Zillow now predicts home prices to start rising again, and I'm sure they know that their mortgages are going to be a part of this, keeping home prices elevated. Yeah, recent article here. This one's out of Fortune. Zillow is a full-blown housing market bull, predicting that U.S. home prices will jump 6.5% by July 2024. So in less than a year from now, July 2024, Zillow is predicting over 6% home price increase. Wow. So that's a pretty bold prediction, but not really when they're the ones giving out, the 1% mortgages. Right. But I actually have to disagree with Zillow here. And for those of you that have been on this channel, I've been pretty accurate about real estate. Um, I don't see prices going up even 1%. I see prices coming down. Do I think they're going to crash? Not unless we see some sort of black swan jump out, or war, or, massive grid down scenario. But other than that, I see prices coming down. I definitely don't see prices rising, um, unless they come out with some more crazy programs where they put a freeze on foreclosures because we have, like Health Crisis 2.0 come out or something like that. I see prices continuing to go down, because even with the 1% mortgages, prices are just so high right now. Even if you get into a home at 1%, first of all, if you only have a 1% down payment, you might want to think twice because it may not be a good time to become a homeowner or be a homeowner in general. If you can't get more than a 1% down payment, are you economically, financially strong enough to maintain the cost of owning a home? But anyways, even with that, prices are so high, and with the cost of maintaining a home now, when you look at everything, the insurance, the maintenance, the energy bills, everything, it's going to be a real struggle for a lot of people. So that's why I say prices will still go down. In my estimates, between 3 and 6%. But Zillow's looking at a swing of 12%. With my forecast, they're saying 6.5% in the positive. I'm saying 3 to 6% negative, meaning falling home prices. Right, and that's an average. It could be more in some cities. It could be less, and you may see it overall decline. But then there will be a few cities where prices are still rising. All right, but the economy is only getting weaker. In fact, there's been a big drop in retail stocks, and an ETF that tracks retailers has been pretty deep in the red here recently. Let's take a look. And we're looking at an ETF that's an exchange traded fund. It's called XRT. It tracks retailers, and we see it's on a very, very steep downslope here. And this compares that ETF, that XRT ETF, to the S&P 500. The S&P 500 being in the green, we see the big drop here recently in retail. And something else on this channel that we basically warned everybody about: beware of being in retail stocks right now. And while there's always going to be some staples that'll be pretty resilient even through an economic depression or recession, like Walmart and the dollar stores, you have to be very, very careful, because earnings and guidance in many of these retailers are very, very bearish. And just look at the retail theft. Retailers are having a real hard time with items being walked out the door, basically unpaid for. Also, the consumers reaching the end of their credit limits now is going to be further weakness for these retailers. Right, remember, this is a consumer-driven economy where consumer spending makes up about 70% of the GDP, and that can't last forever when people have to take on debt to spend. It can't last forever unless they do massive debt forgiveness, which is very, very unlikely. They weren't even able to discharge all the student loan debt, so they're not going to be able to discharge credit card debt and other types of loans. Well, there's one way they could, and that's going to be bankruptcy for a lot of people. And even bankruptcy won't get rid of the student loan debt unless you meet a very small exception group where you can get that loan discharge their student loans, but it's very uncommon. Speaking of retailers struggling and getting slammed, look at this right here. San Francisco Nordstrom closes after nearly 3 decades in business amid rise in crime. Folks, we told you right here for years on this channel, the costs are not going to go down. That a combination of inflationary forces are going to cause, these retailers to keep their prices high. We have the crime too that you and I are paying for. And actually, in our next report, we're going to talk about what Walmart said. And this was somebody at Walmart that told me some pretty shocking news, right? So please stay tuned to this channel, because I'm going to go into a lot of detail on that one. A Walmart worker basically told me what's happening at his Walmart, and the numbers are staggering. And the reason the numbers are so high, I think you're going to find it pretty interesting, right? So please stay tuned. Come back to this channel. Please like, subscribe. Make sure you have that notification checked here, because we're going to keep you updated on the economy, all the major stories, stocks, real estate, retail, automobile prices, cost of living, jobs, you name it. We're going to talk about it here if it has to do with money in the economy. Maybe the next video I'll try to get my color evened out here a little bit. And in fact, I'm using a backup camera today, so I hope the quality is not too bad. I got this nice camera, Sony ZV-1 camera, very nice camera. I've been using it recently, but today it started overheating on me, right? And it's been pretty hot. It was almost 100 today, and this camera lasted maybe 10 minutes before it started overheating. So I'm not sure what it is. I mean, yes, it's hot, but it seems like a camera can still last in the heat for more than 10 minutes without overheating. So I'm going to work on that and try to get better video quality for you next time. But one thing I wanted to say is, kind of an urge of caution. Be careful. Be careful where your money's parked at, because I see some big, big events coming to light very soon. And I think a lot of the let me think of the words I can use here. A lot of the problems with our financial system are going to be exposed, and it's going to be exposed to a lot of people. And there's going to be some big players involved, some big banks involved, and we're going to see a lot of criminality come to light, a lot of corruption come to light. And I don't like to get too much into politics on this channel, but it kind of ties in with that in the financial system. And I think we could see a pretty big shock right around the corner. All right, everybody, I hope you're well. And maybe we'll see you down in comments. I hope to see you down there. And if you haven't checked out our comment section lately, please check it out. There's a lot of smart people down there, a lot of investors, and just people giving their view on what's happening in our world today and here in the United States, with the economy, the monetary system, cost of living, and everything else. Thank you all so much for being here. Big love. Keep stacking. Bye for now.